Great. So welcome everyone. My name is Liz Dykman. I'm going to facilitate this mapping it out session today and give you a little short introduction before we get started with today's session, how to level up your grant application. I want to make sure to take some time to introduce MAPS as well as our speaker, Sophie Lipman. A little bit about Midwest Artist Project Services. MAPS offers free or low-cost resources for working artists in all disciplines, collectives, and emerging arts organizations in the St. Louis region and beyond. MAPS aims to promote new and sustainable growth in the arts through funding opportunities, consultation, and providing access to best solutions for the current issues that affect artists. Today is our Mapping It Out session. It's a series of it's a year-long series of short virtual presentations on the best practices and simple things you can do to grow your art practice now. Each month, MAPS board members will discuss diverse topics and answer your questions. We are going to be taking a little bit of a break in July, but we will be returning with Mapping It Out in August with one of our board members, Sarah Kelly. Registration is free for all of our Mapping It Out sessions, and we do welcome $5 suggested donations. I'll share a donation link in the chat in just 1 second. And before we get started, I did want to share some ground rules. So Sophie will present for about 20 minutes, and we're going to save some time at the end for our questions and answers. During Sophie's presentation, please do keep yourself muted. You're more than welcome to chat with one another or submit questions for the Q&A through the chat box. If it is a question for Sophie, please make sure to indicate that. And after the presentation, you'll receive a survey. Please make sure to fill it out as it's very valuable feedback for MAPS. So a little bit about Sophie. Sophie Lipman is an organizer and facilitator based in the homeland of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa, which is known as Chicago. She is an independent studio and project manager for artists, as well as a collaborator who works to bring co-creative projects to life. Formerly, she served as the public programs and engagement manager at the Pulitzer Arts Foundation, where she worked to engage neighbors and other community members as integral partners in Pulitzer programming. In St. Louis, she also served as a Regional Arts Commission grant panelist for 4 years, and currently she works as an independent project and studio manager, supporting artists in actualizing their work. Outside of her work in the arts, you can find Sophie organizing for prison industrial complex abolition. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Sophie. You're muted, Sophie.
I know, I always have trouble unmuting myself when I'm sharing my screen. I'm like, where's the pop-up? Hey y'all, thank you so much, Liz, and everybody else for being here. Nice to see some friendly names and faces. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about grant writing and applications today. Obviously we don't have time to get too deep, but I just wanted to share some tips that I have learned along the way from reading a lot of grants and from writing a lot of grants. So hopefully this will be helpful, even if it's not new information, and maybe some good reminders. So how do I advance? Okay, so I'm thinking of applying for, I wanted to go through the types of grants or possible applications, just because there are some distinctions. And I'm gonna be mostly talking about this first one. So there's project-based funding, which is, I have a project or program in mind that I wanna seek funding for, so like a specific thing. This is mostly what I'm gonna be talking about, because you have to have, you have to have a project in mind. There's oftentimes more detailed questions that you're being asked versus just like, here's my work and support me, without like a really as much of a need to kind of like justify what you're doing, unfortunately. These next two also very relevant to today, but just as again I said, a little bit less, might be less in depth of an application. So residency or fellowship, an institution or group is offering a residency or fellowship that I would like to participate in. There actually is some overlap here, because sometimes residencies want you to apply with a specific project. And then there's general or operational funding, which is, I want to apply to a grant for general operational funding over my practice or organization or group. So just like supporting the work, but I don't have to really say what I'm going to be using it for. And then relief funding, which is something we saw a lot last year with COVID. So I'm going to apply for a grant for COVID or other relief funding that is probably a much more straightforward application, and you probably don't have to justify what you're going to be using the money for. So I'm going to be mostly talking about the first 1 and 2. So with that, I need to write an application. So this is a photo of Miranda Priestley saying grant writing for spring, groundbreaking. So how do I make my application stand out? And Maps is here for you. So we have a lot of services that I'll talk about at the end too, but also this today is hopefully going to be helpful for y'all. So my main tip is to read. This might seem like it's an obvious thing to do, but I cannot tell you how apparent it is to me when I'm reading applications that people have not read what the grantor is actually proposing and putting out and what's important to them. So before I start, I read and reread all of the information provided by the grantor, whether it's the grant description, an FAQ, reviewing the panelists, figuring out who's going to be reading my application, reviewing the criteria, how are they going to be rating my application, and then determining if I'm eligible. So again, this is super important before you even start writing, because you might like spend time writing, then you're like, oh wait, this is actually for people who are under 20, or and to be fair, grantors this isn't always super accessible information. Sometimes you have to like read way down on the thing, or read like a 46-page, like skim or read a 46-page like PDF that they have put out, but it is very helpful information. This is an image, a little GIF of a cat with glasses reading off a computer screen. So from all, Carly, from all of that, you can ask yourself, am I a good fit? So based on what you read, what are the grantors looking for? What am I looking for? Am I a good fit for this project or for this specific grant? Is my project, a good fit for this specific project opportunity? And I think also something that's helpful is to look at past artists and projects that they have funded. Usually this info is available, not all the time, but I think it can be helpful to figure out the type of work that they're funding and notice what the similarities and differences are. So like, are they usually funding types of projects that are like with multiple collaborators, or like only mid-career artists, even though they say it's open to everyone? Like Creative Time, for example, which is a massive funder of providing a lot of funding, they really like to have projects that haven't started, that are like in the seeds of being formulated, because they want to be very part and parcel of like forming and shaping the project. So like knowing this and like knowing what work they funded can be helpful. So this is an image of Larry David trying to fit a suitcase into an overhead compartment. So starting early, again, I know this might seem like an obvious thing, and I know some people really like to work under pressure and like it makes them write better. I am not one of those people, but also understand that exists. And I would encourage y'all to like convince yourself that the deadline is a week earlier and like write for that, because there are always things that you're going to find, whether it's gathering materials or working on the budget, spreading it out so that you don't feel like this little child here crazily scribbling because the application is due today. So this also will give you time to get feedback, which I'm going to talk about. Using all available resources. Again, there is a lot of information online that funders put out, whether that's the information they have. Oftentimes they have like a live session, whether it's like a Q&A session or an informational session specifically about their grant. Use these resources, like these are there for you. Also, there's usually a program or grant administrator who's there to like help you answer questions. And so really, I would not ever hesitate to reach out to them to clarify, or to be like, hey, like, I'm thinking this is what I'm thinking this question is asking, but like, I just wanted to make sure, because like, they're not always clear. And so I would always rather try to ask. If they don't respond, okay, but like, at least you're trying to use that resource. I would recommend not emailing like the night or day before, but like if you can reach out to them earlier, they are there to help you. So all these resources are at your fingertips. Use them. I forget his name. I don't watch Star Trek, but this is a Star Trek person. So being confident is really important. Remembering that you are your best champion. So be direct, know that you know what you're talking about. You know, you don't need to be like overly, you know, like I am the best, but like be confident in that you know what you're doing and that you can execute this project. So think about, I think along these lines, it's really helpful to think about this question or these questions. Why me? Why now? So even sometimes funders will ask this question directly, but even if they don't, this is really something that even if you're spending some time just like journaling or writing or thinking about, can be helpful in convincing the reader that this is the project that they should fund. You know, why should you pick me, and why should you pick me now versus next year? And so this is, I think those are really key questions to think about. This is what's her name from Schitt's Creek saying that I am ready for this. One must champion oneself and say, I am ready for this. Anyway, I had way too much fun with these memes. So getting into the actual writing. Again, reading each question carefully, making sure that I'm answering all parts of the question in my response. Sometimes funders like to ask three questions in one question. And I see a lot when I'm reading applications that sometimes only the first question is answered. So making sure that you're reading all the parts of the question and trying to incorporate as much as possible, which is difficult because there are word limits, you know, that you're addressing at least part of all of the questions that they're asking. You can think of your application like a snapshot of the project. So you're telling a story, but you're also providing a blueprint. So, you know, this may be something that you've done before. And so you want to tell the story of what it's like and strike a balance between context and specifics. Ooh, there should be an and there. But also, if you haven't done it, you're basically telling the person how it's going to go, like a blueprint. And so I think this balance between context and specifics is really important because you want to provide the context and kind of paint a bigger picture for like why you're doing this and why it's important, and provide specifics. So this point about remember to say what I'm doing, I think often a big mistake people make is like even saying the actual thing, like I am writing a play or I am creating a music video. Sometimes when we're so enmeshed in the project, that is so obvious that we don't say it. And so I could be reading this application being like, this sounds great, but like, I don't know what it is. So just making sure that you're being specific, trying not to use Sunday words. So those are like very long, elaborate words that might make you sound smart to some people, but also like I always just think simple and straightforward is better. Obviously you want to be specific, so if there are certain words you need to use for that, but clear, direct language I think is always helpful. And then this other point is about pulling language from the question, review criteria, and grant brief. So you've read all this information, you know what they're looking for, you can pull some of that language in. Like if they're saying that this grant is to, like one of the goals of this grant or what they're trying to do with this grant is like to engage young people, you know, you can use that language and it will actually make a stronger case for them to fund you, because you're saying right here, hey, this is how I'm going to engage this group of young people, and this is exactly what they're trying to do with the grant. Okay, so start long and edit down. As I said, there are oftentimes word or character limits that can be really challenging. Like it is very difficult to answer fully all the things you want to say in like 100 words. It's not a lot of space. So I'm always a fan of starting long and editing down. So like start writing all of your ideas and then editing down. And so when you finally get that moment where you find the sentence or the word, it's very satisfying. And you think this is it. Feedback. So feedback is really important. Again, this relates to timing. If you have, ideally you would be asking someone with more than several days of notice to read your application before you submit it. This could be maps. This could be your parent or partner. This could be someone who like is a friend but doesn't really know about the project. I always think that's the most helpful, because then they're seeing it with fresh eyes and they can be like, hey, I actually don't know what you're saying here. It sounds cool, but like, it's not clear to me. And because we're so close to the work and we care so much, having that new set of eyes is always really helpful. This is Elf saying, I love feedback. Oh, I can't read the bottom because there. Feedback's my favorite. Okay, let's see. I think we have a few more here. Budgeting. So budgeting, again, this is mostly for the project part of the, so when I was listing those 4 categories at the beginning, this is more common for the first and maybe second one, third one as well, but budgeting for like your whole organizational operational budget is very different than what I'm talking about right here. So budgeting is also a storytelling moment. So this is an opportunity for you to show that you know and understand what it takes to execute the project that you're proposing. So yeah, I often think budgets are really helpful to be like, oh yeah, like they understand, they've thought about the components. And I want to give a shout out to Liz for doing a mapping it out session back in January that had some really helpful tips about like project planning in general, including budgeting. But also just saying like, you know, it's okay if you don't know everything. You can make your best guesses, like do some Googling, maybe call some places and be like, hey, what would this cost? Or do some research on estimates. And this is a proposal. So funders know that things will change, but it's important that you really use this as an exercise to think about, okay, I have this project. What's it actually going to take for me to make this happen? And like, what are all the things that who's going to be involved? Do I need to pay them? What are the things I'm going to have to be doing? What materials and equipment are needed? And like this is like a really crystallizing moment sometimes. It's like, oh wait, how is that actually going to happen? Again, watch the mapping it out from January with Liz. Support materials. This is, I think, one of my last points. I know we have not that much time left. So supporting materials should also tell a story and intrigue the reader. I think this is a great opportunity to share more about the project. Usually this is like images or sound clips or video clips. And most of the time there is a place to write a description. So something that I like to do is use that, like not only describe what the thing that I'm submitting, but show how it shows the reader or grant reviewer that like this video shows that I know how to work with a group of people to like execute something. Like I organized these people for this video shoot, and like while it's not the same content, like this shows that I know how to do this process. So like thinking about the thing, whether it's like, oh, this is like orally similar to the work I'm going to be, with a song I'm going to be doing, or like thinking about what it is about that work sample that is going to help show the grantor that like you can do the project if you have it. If you don't have, because oftentimes we're applying for things that don't exist yet, right? So I think that's a really great way to like paint a picture of like, okay, I'm going to start with this work of my general practice that's just like introducing them to my aesthetic, but then I'm going to go into or my sound or my writing style, and then I'm going to go into like, oh, this, I'm going to share this with you because I did this thing here and it's similar to what I want to do here for this aspect. And then just being sure to check naming requirements, details like that, but this should leave your grantor wanting to be told more, which is what this meme is about. So MAPS is here for you. We have resources. We have a mock grant panel in the fall. I don't think the date is set yet, but this is a great way to like get feedback. You know, I never recommend like using the exact language and like trying to make it fit into another application, but like the process of practicing writing a proposal, I think is very, very helpful. And then we have consultations, so you can sign up anytime to get someone from MAPS to read your proposal and give you feedback. So I think that's it. I think we just have questions, and I might end this screen because I would prefer to see you all. So I'm gonna do that.
Go for it. All right.
So, yes, sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to just open it up. If you do have a question for Sophie, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask her directly. Sophie, thank you so much for an excellent set of tips and tricks on how to level up our grant applications, as well as the best memes I think I've seen in a very long time. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay, does anyone want to ask Sophie a question? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and do it very selfishly. I was really interested in your point about, you know, being able to answer the questions, why me and why now? And I feel like a lot of folks often, when I don't often apply for grants, but I have been a grant reader a lot. And something that I think I see often with artists struggling with is articulating the why now part of that. And I was wondering if you can maybe speak a little bit more in detail to what to you in the past has been a convincing, like, this is why it's important to fund me now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it can be a number of different things. Like, I have been convinced by where someone is at in their artistic practice. So like, I'm someone who, you know, is like coming up, and I've been getting more interest, and like I have this project, and I'm like kind of on I'm like expanding my audience, and I think that like I have big ideas, but I need support. And like I can see that like they've been getting certain things, and like now would be a really good time to like support and get behind them. Other things I think have to do with like who they're working with and like context of it is a hard question, because I think certain work isn't always timely, you know, like some people's practice or it's always timely, I should say, is a better way to say. Like it's, you know, it's relevant. It's either like more personal work, or it's speaking to like more like, you know, common human experiences. And so I think in those instances, the work really has to stand for itself, and like just the vision and like capacity, and like in those instances, I look more to like, what is the vision, and like, am I confident that they can execute it? And so I think if it's not something that feels timely in terms of an artist practice, or in terms of like something that's going on in that neighborhood, in that city, in this region, that's like, oh, this is addressing something that is timely, literally, you know, I think I look more to am I confident that they can act, like, do I believe in the vision? Does the vision align with what this grantor is seeking? And am I confident that they can execute it?
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from Brian. He asks, is it okay to name drop, or does name dropping reflect poorly on the applicant's own ability?
I feel very mixed about this. But I feel like it's probably very personal to the reviewer, which, you know, is a caveat of grant reviewers, that like we all are bringing biases and opinions into this. You know, I think it can be helpful if you've worked with someone in the past of like, hey, this is a relationship I've been building, like this is what, like this is part of, this has informed my practice. But if it's like, oh, I know this person, or oh, this person likes my work, that to me is a little bit less helpful and just feels like I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. I mean, you know, sometimes grantors ask for letters of recommendation. So like that's a place that's really helpful for like if you know someone who like has some pull or like, you know, is going to be a recognized name to potentially, and like it's going to mean a lot for them to be like, I believe in this artist, like that's a great place. But I would say like unless it's about a specific thing that you've learned from them or relationship or like, or if they have like a specific connection to the project, I'm not sure that it makes sense to name drop them, just to name drop. I see advice on becoming a reviewer. Yes, 100%. I would say that has been so helpful to just see. That was really helpful for me. I started doing that like in 2015. And I think, I'll get to your question, but I think that's an immensely helpful tool to like learn how to be a reviewer, and you start to see very quickly like what makes a good application and like what the writing is like, and which I tried to say some of here, but it's very difficult to kind of describe. Yeah, you're seeing and you're like, oh well, I'm less convinced here because they like didn't speak to this question. And so I think that yeah, review opportunities. I mean, RAC has them, I believe. No, not anymore. Just kidding. I don't know.
I think I'll put a link in the chat, but I think Missouri Arts Council might be the regional reviewer or funder right now that is accepting grant reviewers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But also like coming to the MAPS mock grant panel, you know, we give the feedback like out loud. So it can be very helpful to just hear what they have to say. And if you're submitting something, that's a great place for it, even if you're not a reader. I always have trouble choosing most effective support material, especially if I'm proposing a genre jump, yeah, or a new type of vendetta. Yeah, I mean, again, I think like figuring out if it is a genre jump, like figuring out how this thing, like let's say it's film work and you've been mostly writing or doing music, like figuring out, as I said, like how a writing sample shows that like, or like how this writing sample can be applied to the other project. Like I'm gonna give an example. So I'm working with an artist who's working on an opera, and he's never written an opera, but he's done a lot of music and like done some film work. And so being able to be like, okay, yeah, for this is a song, and some of that sound may be similar to this, or like this process of you know, choreographing this video is going to be helpful for me in working with actors on a stage. So I think if it's a big genre jump, I mean, it's hard to know without knowing the specifics of the jump, but I mean, I think having a mix of like showing really strong work in another discipline and then being able to figure out how your experience in one discipline is going to make them have confidence that you can do the work in the other discipline. I don't know if that was helpful.
Yes, Sophie, it was. Thank you.
We can talk more too. Yes, so I know we're past time, I think. Does anyone have any other questions?
Okay. Well, let's all give Sophie a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Sophie. That was incredibly helpful, especially having you take the time to answer our questions. Just so everyone knows, this recording will be posted on MAP's YouTube, so you can always check it out later, or any of our other Mapping It Out videos. I hope that you all checked out the chat. There's lots of resources in there. You can also just visit midwestarts.org if you're interested in learning more about the mock grant panel that Sophie mentioned, consultations, or any of our other opportunities. Thank you again, Sophie, so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who attended. And hopefully we'll see you all at our next Mapping It Out session. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.